It's funny. I got my very first job when I was 16 was actually in a mom and pop kind of fast food hybrid restaurant where, I wore the little apron and the hat and took orders and then served the food out to people's tables. And that was fun. And then I jumped over into the retail world, and just started as a part-time sales associate and something crazy in me clicked, and I just love the customer service aspect and the upfront sales floor and operational piece of that, and just interacting with people all day, every day, and just started working my way up. So I went from sales associate, to manager levels, to district manager levels, and then uh, along the way, many years later at Bed Bath and Beyond, I kind of started in that trainer role. I got placed in charge of customer service training, which was basically all of the product knowledge classes that all the employees had to take, and did that at a district level. So for Orange County and San Diego and part of LA, I got to oversee the entire training program and the wedding registry. And I just fell in love with it from there, started facilitating training and kind of rewriting the courses and making them adaptable and a little bit more up to date and current, if you will. And as soon as I started doing that, it just kind of evolved from there, just kept working my way into it. And Jenny
Oh,
Craig really gave me that opportunity to go into the corporate end of it and start really to the development piece and really learning LMS systems and all the background work behind it. And I've been obsessed ever since. There's definitely a ton of similarities across, and I have to assume it goes beyond even just retail and QSR. Frontline learners are such a unique pocket, and it's such a huge percentage of the workforce in general, just across the nation and really worldwide, right? Frontline learners can span so many different industries. They're deskless, right? You're talking about people who are not at computers all day, every day. They're not just sitting with the ability to have meetings and absorb learning that way. They're on the job, on the go, moments to train, not hours, in each day. So having that experience behind me and being the person coming from that sales floor and having to try to learn on the job has really served me well with just understanding those challenges and how concise training has to be and quick to absorb, and getting it in a format that's easy to absorb too, right? And that has not changed over the years. That's one thing that holds true of all of these years that I've been either on the receiving end or the development end, is really just if you're in a role where you're on the front line and you're on a floor, no matter what sort of floor it is, and not at a desk, it's got to be in a way that's fast, easy, simple, and effective.
yeah.
And that's never changed. The
Yeah.
methods may change, but that underlying principle remains the same. Biggest difference when you look at an industry like this is that, um, you know, in the retail world, the products tend to change a little bit less, right? Whereas when you get into QSR, you've got ever evolving products. So you're going to have regular launches coming out, new foods you have to learn how to build. There might be similarities between products, but really there's new things all the time. So there's definitely a different approach that you have to take with being able to, if you have five new products launching all at the same time, we have to figure out effective ways for those frontline learners who don't have much time to learn to be able to absorb all five of those products and be ready on that launch day, to do them correctly for the guests. So there's definitely a little bit different approach there, and a different inclusion of what the learning has to be. I mean, it's just the nature of this industry as well as retail, and a lot of these types of industries, is that you do face employee turnover because for a lot of people it's their first job, and it's not their career path. Maybe they're just working this job while they're going to college, or they're still in school, right? It's something to kind of get them through, or to just learn, what the being in the workforce even is. So it's just the nature of the beast. And so what we always have to take into consideration is to never rely on assuming because we've done something in the past, maybe a similar product or the same product, we can never go into the next launch of it assuming that people will remember or even know what it is from the previous time. It makes a big difference. In Jack in the Box is one of these companies, right, where if anybody's familiar with it, it's kind of quirky, it's kind of out there, right? We have a really fun aesthetic. Our mascot is a clown, basically, right, with a giant head. He's not a clown. I shouldn't say that since our competitor is a clown, but it's a man with a giant head and big buff arms and a family, and he has a whole backstory, and people love it, right? It's a very fun and unique and quirky environment. So if our training doesn't feel that way for the employees, there's a disconnect there, right? Because a lot of people come in to work at Jack in the Box assuming that that's the culture and that's the feel and what their experience is going to be too, because as a customer, that's their experience from our commercials and everything else. So we do have to be unique and quirky and do things a little bit outside the box, if you will, no pun intended, to make sure that that feeling resonates for the employees too, right? We have to be able to keep that feeling alive. So we get very creative in our videos and kind of our approaching and our internal marketing, if you will, from
Yeah.
the training perspective to make sure people feel that same engagement that they would if they were watching a commercial. So it's
Yeah.
fun in that way. It's challenging, but it's fun to keep that alive, for our employees. We get to be a little funny in that way. I definitely make sure that our entire group is completely meshed together and we work together at the same pace through every project so that I don't have instructional designers that are kind of thinking about things through one lens and then my really super creative, designer type employees are thinking about it from another end. We function fully as one unit, and I've really worked hard to bring that team together so that we do have a uniform approach moving forward where both worlds are met. But on the back end, like you said, we have to be sure that the learning actually exists, right? Like so that we strike that solid balance. So really we have to measure not only, sales performance and whatnot from the company end and the overall end production of like even products, right? If we launch a new product, like what are the guests telling us? Is it what they expected? Is the quality good? Is it
Mm.
being done correctly? Are they receiving the right product? But also looking at measurables that we can look at from the training development end, like video watch rates, completion rates of the training courses. How long did people spend in the courses? Was it 30 seconds or was it the 30 minutes it
Mhm.
should have been?
Yeah.
Things like that we can really measure to make sure that people are taking it and doing it effectively. And then a lot of it really, we do a lot of field feedback. I am constantly in conversations with partners out in the field that will tell me just straight out whether or not something worked, and so we're
Yeah.
always working to kind of evolve our approach in print, in video, and in e-learning to make sure that it's meeting those needs and it's digestible enough to actually make sense to all those frontline learners. So my team, we actually don't do much in the way of that corporate training, to be
Yeah.
honest. A lot of that goes out is kind of comes through our HR department, and we just host it, on the Echo Inc. platform. We just host it for completion in that platform. But they kind of oversee those compliance type courses and whatnot. So our predominant focus is the field from my team's perspective, but that does go all the way up, into the high leadership levels as well, district managers and beyond, for training. So it is a varied audience as far as how they digest the content. Because in a restaurant, you're talking about a tablet, or print materials. But if you're talking about like a district manager and leadership development, they have laptops and they have a little bit more, time that they can commit to learning in that way, in a little bit more of a I don't know, flexible environment, I guess I should say.
Yep.
So when we look at the technology, we really do have to consider the type of training that we're doing and who that audience is to make the right decision for how we put something out. Echo Inc. is what we use for 99% of probably what we put out to all of those levels because that's where they've become comfortable. That's our LMS system, right? That's where all of our learners from all levels go in and are used to completing their training. It's where they view their videos. It's where they have their full content library that they can search resources and manuals and everything. So that's our first go-to always is our Echo Inc. platform. because it serves the purpose that, that meets the need across the board.
Yeah.
If we do bring in any other technology, it's really maybe to meet a specific purpose, or a specific type of learning that we'd want to incorporate, probably for those more of those upper leadership levels rather than our field teams, if that makes sense. I think is probably the right way to put it. We are not jumping in full force into using every type of AI that's out there because there's certain elements that we don't want to lose the human touch because you can lose a connection in that way, right? And if our field feels connected to our training, it's bound to be more effective. So, for instance, we have not taken the human element out of training videos and replaced it with like an AI avatar. We're just not in the place to do that because it doesn't feel as real. And it's important that they feel connected to that real spirit of somebody who understands, their role in their job and how to do things effectively. So we're being very cautious. We do use it in a number of ways, though, in producing content, as far as maybe voiceovers for training videos, translation into Spanish. Um, Pretty much all of our materials need to be bilingual.
Yeah.
So there's definitely different formats in which we do use it at this stage, and we keep really close tabs on what is coming down the pipe, with technology and whatnot, because I know there's a lot of, programs out there that will be course creation, things like that. Drop in a document, it'll create a course for you, for your
Mhm.
LMS, things of that nature. But at this point, the more we look at it, the more we're realizing, well, it doesn't solve all your problems, right? If you have to do just
Mhm.
as much work to edit it and make it usable as you would if you just did it from scratch, we'd rather just keep the control ourselves and do it
Yeah.
ourselves. Yeah, we do it from a few different angles. So one of them I mentioned is like video watch rates. We
Mhm.
stream from Vimeo and we go in there and we measure those results quite a bit, especially with our product launch courses because those are like every 6 to 8 weeks, right? So we tend to go in and look at every single video and just see, okay, where did people start to drop off? What percentage watched all the way through? Okay, and then what was this video? It's important that we measure, you know, this is how we identify, do videos in general need to be shorter? Was one not effective enough because it actually has like double the watch rates, which would tell me that people had to watch it again and again, right, to be able to understand it. So there's a lot of true understanding because we use video for so much of our training. It's like our number one go-to method of training. So video alone, those measurables tell us quite a bit just about the activity in them and how people are absorbing it, or if they even are, or if they're even watching it, if it did no good at all.
Yeah.
But then there's also, using what we can directly in Echo Inc., which is looking at things like completions and, where people are at, the progress points of courses and whatnot, where did they drop off? Are they not completing
Mhm.
it? Are they completing it too quickly? And things like that. So there's definitely a few different angles we take, but a lot of it too, we use quizzing, and assessments in our courses too to make sure people are understanding and able to pass that quiz, before they go on to the next piece, to validate understanding in that way. So none of it's foolproof, right? But it
Mhm.
gives us enough to go off of to where we can identify maybe what methods are working and what is not. And then at the end of the day, our guests are always going to tell us, right, if
Yeah.
there's a problem out there, if something is not being done right.